Let's wrap up chapter 23 in the book of Genesis and then transition into the new study this evening. That is my plan and my goal. I like looking closely and analyzing the lives of faithful people, which that's partly what we're going to be doing in the men's study as we begin, and reflecting on their actions, the things that they had done, the things that they said. And so it's good to consider these things because we too have to go through trials, difficulty, challenging circumstances. And so the instance of what Abraham finds himself in right here is that we see his faith looking beyond this life, but he's also realizing that he still has to remain faithful in this life. And so Sarah, as we talked about last time, she is passed away. She dies at 127 years old, and those were the years of the life of Sarah. And we see there in verse 2, Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And so, sometimes people look at grief, and this is some of the things I talked about yesterday, but they look at grief and they view it as that it's a sign of weakness, that somehow their faith isn't as strong as others. But I would submit to you that I believe that godly faith allows and purposes itself for us to grieve honestly, to be able to weep, right? We're told to weep with those who weep and to rejoice with those who rejoice. And so it's not shameful. It's not a shameful act. I think sometimes, though, people are more ashamed of weeping than they are of their own sin. Right? And we're supposed to weep over sin. We're supposed to have godly sorrow over sin. But some people, they're so concerned with how everybody views them. And so, continuing on in the text, verse 3, Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me a burial site among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Hear us, my Lord, you are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our graves. None of us will refuse you his grave for burying your dead. And so Abraham is identifying his reality, his circumstances. And so he's living with a confidence within God's promise, because God's promised him this location, if you will. And so, but he also understands that this is temporary. I do a lot of talking, and I don't open up too much. Anybody have anything? I know it's early in class. Okay. But let's continue on. I'll make the class go quicker. So Abraham rose and bowed to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. He could have came through and said, well, this is my land. Could have. Now that would have been really foolish because, God and His promises, I think so many people struggle with this. It's not always miracles that work out His purpose, right? Think about the providence of God. Providence isn't always worked out through miracles. It's worked out through normal, natural circumstances. So think about the sacrifice of Isaac. I don't want to say that that's a normal, natural circumstance. It's not normal for a parent to tie up and bind up their child and say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice you. However, there was nothing supernatural going on in that instance, was there? There was simply a command given and a command that was followed. What's so supernatural about that? But God, in His providence, He stops, He stays the hand and says, now I know. Right? So that's not necessarily supernatural, but that's just providence working through the life of man, working through the faithfulness of man. And so again, that's how I feel about Abraham. And when I read through many of these examples, I'm looking through so many of these examples. You think about the life of Joseph. Can anybody think of anything that's just constant throughout his life that was supernatural?
His faith in Joseph's life.
Yeah. But think about it. I mean, yes, he had faith, no doubt.
And he had vision. It's...
But I'm talking about working throughout his whole life. Think about him being thrown into the pit, thrown into jail. Those are normal circumstances. Now, they're not ideal circumstances, because had he been thrown in the pit while, those pits were full of water. So usually when they would throw people in there, they would drown. But when he's thrown into it, it's not full of water. It's during kind of a dry season, if you will. And with him going to jail, right? Yes, we are. I'm going back to Abraham, but just be patient with me. I'm just giving you some examples to consider that there's not always something supernatural going on for faithful people. Were there supernatural things? Yes. But was it constant in order to keep them faithful? I don't think so. Did Abraham have to have something supernatural happening to him in order to keep him faithful? I don't think so. But God made a promise. And so, yes, through supernatural means, as far as through Sarah and her giving childbirth and all that, that was beyond nature. I'll give you that. But he was already faithful before then. It was because of his faith that he received that promise. You see? And so Abraham, through the death of Sarah, see, verse 7, Abraham rose, he bowed to the people. He's being respectful to the people of the land that God had promised him. And he spoke with them, saying, if it is your wish for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and approach Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns, which is at the end of his field, for the full price. Let him give it to me in your presence for a burial site. Now, he's not just saying give it to me. He's saying I'm offering full price. Whatever his asking price is, I want to give it to him. And so here we see a man who's grieving, who's also received the promise of God, of this nation, of this land. He could have easily bulked himself up with ego and pride and said, well, this is mine, and so I'm not giving you anything for it. You're just going to give it to me. But no, he conducts himself in a manner with dignity and transparency. He wants to live peaceably with these people. And so he's offering full price. And now Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went into the gate of his city, saying, no, my Lord, hear me, I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. In the presence of the sons of my people, I give it to you to bury your dead. I look at this and I'm seeing respect being reciprocated, right? Why do you think that is? Does anybody want to take a stab as to why this type of respect is being reciprocated amongst these people? He's being respectful to them. I mean, we just think about the golden rule.
Well, I'm just kind of thinking that, with all of the stuff that Abraham had been through in his history, with God had kind of spread the territory, and, these people were aware that he was a patriot of God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that had a lot to do with his humbleness. He knew he was an example of God
Mm-hmm.
to people.
Right.
That just,
But the thing is that sometimes we can get a big head about ourselves, can't we? We can begin to think a little bit more of ourselves, and we're given biblical examples of take heed, be careful of how you view yourself, how you elevate yourself. We're not supposed to be that way, and we're not supposed to be prideful, and yet that's the type of instance here. This perfect example with Abraham is that he's coming to them and he's saying, look, I just want to bury my dead. I'll pay the full price.
Abraham was a rich man,
Absolutely.
and he didn't want anything for nothing. He wanted to be respectful and pay for what he got.
That's right.
And wound up, him and Sarah both hid in that cave.
Absolutely. Because he ends up in it after he passes. And so, Abraham bowed before the people of the land. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, if you will only please listen to me, I will give the price in the field, accept it from me, that I may bury my dead there. So this is a culturally right thing to do. It wasn't typical for folks to just give up a gravesite, if you will. And so he's doing something, he's trying to be as respectful as possible. He's trying to be a person who's ethical. Now, they obviously didn't have that term back then, but he's trying to be a respectful person. Ephron answered, verse 14, saying, my Lord, listen to me, a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? So bury your dead. I also think he probably kind of, as Bill was saying, Abraham wanted for nothing. He was a rich fella, and these people, they probably were no dummies or no slouches. They probably knew how much he had.
Probably didn't want anybody saying, I gave him that land, so he owes me something.
Right. But
He bought it, so he had it free and clear.
right. I think that goes back to kind of the purpose of God. So absolutely. So bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver which he had named in the hearing of the sons, and 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. I like how some of these translations renders that. And so this burial place, 17 through 20, this is kind of a statement of hope for people. This cave of Machpelah becomes Abraham's first owned land, as he could say, as he purchased, if you will, from the people. And yet this was a place that God had said he was going to give him. And so this is the first step toward God fulfilling this promise. And so we see his faith preparing for the future. He was preparing for his future, because what did Bill just say? Where does Abraham end up as far as physically goes? He ends up right there in that cave. But I think we have to look beyond just this physical life. What are we investing ourselves in? What are we purchasing, if you will, in our life? I want us to think beyond just fleshly, material, worldly possessions. Are we buying the truth, or are we selling it? Are we investing in our future? What promise has God given us? He hasn't promised us the land of Canaan.
Home in heaven.
Home in heaven, eternal life. So what are we doing to attain that? Now, that's not me saying that we earn it somehow or that we deserve it. But what are we doing to receive that promise? To have the hope of that promise? And so Abraham's taking steps. What we're seeing is we see a faith that trusts. We see a faith that believes, that obeys, that hopes. And so I think that's a faith worth imitating. All right. I said we were going to get through chapter 23. So let's go to chapter 24. So the next page in the study, we're going to be, obviously chapter 24 is heavily on the instance of having a wife chosen for Isaac. You see the memory work there, Hebrews 11 and 20. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come, because their coming was different, wasn't it? Now, I don't know how you guys all feel, but as I was studying and considering other outside sources, some people say, well, these were the first twins ever. These are the first recorded twins. And there was something different about their coming. Does anybody recall what promise is made concerning them? Who's going to serve who? The older is going to serve the younger, and that's rubbing things against the grain. You ever taken a cat and rubbed the fur the wrong way? How did the cat like it? Probably didn't like it very much. But that's what's happening here. We have an instance of the older is going to serve the younger. That's not normal. That's not what we do. But the wisdom of God goes against the wisdom of man. Right? The wisdom of man talks about the wisdom of God in the sense of, well, that's foolishness. And so, obviously, I don't want to get too far ahead because we're not there yet. Right now, we're just trying to get Isaac a wife. And so, what is it that Abraham solely focused on? Let's look at the first few verses here. Chapter 24. Now Abraham was old, advanced in age, and the Lord had blessed Abraham in every way. Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he owned, please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live, but you will go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac. So let me play devil's advocate for just a moment. Oh, man, but they're just right there. And they're beautiful. Look at those women. They're gorgeous. I can't pick a woman from there. I want you to think about that for just a moment. What's the significance behind that? I think first and foremost, Abraham has a mission. Because he's got the promise of God at his door, at his foot, and placed on him. And he says, I want you to go to my people. Marriage in this time isn't for romance. It's for a mission. And I just can't help but think that that's why so many marriages fall apart today. There's too many people that are looking for just romance. They're looking for lust. And when that romance burns out, what do you got? You got a crotchety old raggedy man and a grouchy woman. And they're biting each other's heads off because the romance is gone. I mean, you laugh, but I mean, how many divorces have you guys experienced or witnessed? And it's because the two weren't on the same mission. They didn't have aligned values. And Abraham is so concerned with the marriage of Isaac, he says, we have to align this to the purpose of God. And so he insists that his wife does not come from the Canaanites, but from his own people. Because this marriage is going to shape the generations to come. Now, I get it that there's not a direct, perfect parallel here, because obviously we have a little more freedom. I do think there's wisdom, though. Because I don't necessarily believe, I don't take the position that a Christian has to marry a Christian, else you are sinful. If that's the case, then we're in a whole lot of trouble. And then you've got a big conundrum in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, when you've got Christians, you've got believers married to unbelievers, and what does Paul tell them? He says, don't divorce your spouse, don't leave them. So I don't think that's necessarily what's in view there. You know, some people reference the passage that talks about being unequally yoked. Well, that's not talking about marriage. Now, are there some principles and some wisdom there? Yes. You need to be very careful who you choose to spend your future of your life with. Now, obviously, the majority of us in here, we've all done that. Too bad Logan's not here. He's just at home not feeling well. But Abraham's acting on faith and not convenience. Because it would be convenient for him to send out the servant and say, hey, go pick out a woman. Any woman. But that's not how God operates. And that's not how Abraham operates. He says, no, I want you to go out, not pick daughters from the Canaanites, but I want you to go to my country, to my relatives, and take a wife for my son, Isaac. And so he's thinking long term. He's not thinking just emotionally. And so, you know, I think this is good to talk about, because I'm sure all of you do interact with younger people, or have, or eventually will, Lord willing. And so maybe you can give them some sound advice. Tell them, don't look for just romance. Don't look for just the pretty face in the picture. Ask my wife. I've changed over the years. But there's a responsibility here. Spiritual compatibility matters. And I think what's happening is far too often there's preachers who are not willing to say the things that are uncomfortable, to say the things that need to be said. Sometimes parents don't say the things that need to be said. So it's not just preachers. I'm not trying to just pick on preachers, and I'm not parents in particular. We need to tell people the truth. And if we see something from afar and we've got life experience, let me tell you, I just think back to my time earlier on as a Christian. I remember some of the older men who tried to mold and shape me. And I remember during those times, I felt that I wish that they would just leave me alone, leave me be. Don't try to steer me. And now, obviously it's too late because they're gone, but it's like now I wish they were still here. That the voice of reason, the voice of influence, of good godly influence was still around to help shape and mold the current youth that we have. Because look at the state of the city. It's a mess. It's a wreck. That's probably an understatement.
Yes.
Is that why you kind of...
It ain't just the city, it's the whole country.
Well, right.
It's the world.
I'm just looking at something local here. Something that we can possibly influence.
Yeah.
But people don't want us to come and tell them, hey, that person's not right for you. Because what are they thinking most of the time? Well, they're good looking and this, that, and the other. They've got money, they've got this, they've got that. That's not a reason to marry somebody. And I'll tell you, when me and Sarah married, she was still a Catholic heathen. She'll tell you. She tells the story. Look, we met on MySpace. If anybody remembers what that was. That was basically Facebook before Facebook existed. You're going to help her?
They never met each other until they were married. Their families put it together. Back to being a Catholic, my culture, the way I was raised, I was expected to marry an Italian Catholic girl, and I married this little Church of Christ girl, and so that's far as I'm going.
You have to go home with her, so you better be careful. That is true. But she will tell this story. I've told it exactly how she's told people. But when we were together, like when we first met, I invited her to come to church. And she said, well, I'll come to your church if you come to mine. I'm not going to the Catholic Church. You're more than welcome to come with me. And she did. And she was exposed to something that she had never been exposed to before. She was encouraged to open up her Bible and read. And it's not just one group. I mean, there's a lot of religions that don't want you opening up the Word. They just trust the preacher, trust the leaders, and what have you, and everything will work out. But what's falling just flat on its face is just the failure of communicating good, godly wisdom. Well, it's just easy to go and do it this way. It would have been so easy for that servant to just step out the door and walk down a few dirt roads and boom, she's pretty, okay, come on, here's all the camels, here's everything, right? Because, he takes the whole herd of camels and everything. And what ends up happening? He prays. He begins praying to God.
Abraham's God.
Right. He's praying to Abraham's God. Basically, Lord, let me find this woman successfully. And then he comes up with an example, like show me a sign, right? And this happens throughout Scripture a lot. But give me a sign. Like she's going to offer me a drink, and then not only am I going to get done drinking, but she's going to be watering my camels. And that's exactly what happens, isn't it? You see the purpose of God unfolding before our very eyes. This passage emphasizes the providence of God. It's not luck. It's not based on chance, because the servant openly acknowledges God in his prayer. And so prayer needs to shape our decisions, not just comfort our emotions. Because for him, if he's just walking through, it's like, I just need to get this job done. I need to get it done quickly. Instead of doing it the right way. Right? That's the problem we had with the air conditioning in there. The first guy wanted to get the job done quickly. And then the belt broke again. It's like, no, let's get the right belt and do it the right way. Like it should have been done the first time. Now, obviously, that doesn't occur here. But he relies on prayer. But God tells him, go to my country. And so then he also says, suppose, the servant said to Abraham, suppose that the woman's not willing to follow me to this land. Should I take your son back to the land from where you came from? And Abraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. Interesting. Abraham understood that there was nothing left back there, because God told him to leave there and to go to the land which he would promise him. What's back there? What's back in Sodom and Gomorrah? Nothing. Because what happened to Lot's wife? She turned back, turned into a pillar of salt. There was nothing back there. And Abraham's communicating this reality. Don't take him back there. There's no life there. Life is forward. Life is ahead of you. You walk the straight and narrow path, and you're on your way to heaven. But if you go back and you look back, we have all of these examples in Scripture of looking back. Anyone who puts his hand to the plow and looks back, he's not what? He's not worthy. He's not fit for the kingdom. So don't take him back. God's moving us forward. And that's what we need to realize, is that God's moving us forward in our lives, even through shaping us through uncomfortable things. But so often we pray for our scenarios to be comforted instead of finding ways to just persevere through them. And then the prayer shaping our decisions. So don't take the boy back. Lord God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife from my son there. Well, that's trust. That's confidence. There's no doubt in Abraham's mind that wherever this servant goes, God's going to provide. When Abraham and Isaac loaded up and saddled up that donkey and they went up the mountain with the servants, and then Abraham told those servants, hey, you stay here with the animals, me and the boy are going to go up. What did he say? God will provide. Do we see this thread? It starts from the beginning and it's going right through. God is going to provide each and every opportunity that He gets to provide. What happens is so many of us don't rely on Him. We don't trust in Him. We're so focused carnally, physically, that we're missing the grand picture of it all. Because we're so focused on our comfort here and now. God has continuously provided for Abraham, and Abraham continuously trusts in Him. God will provide. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this my oath. Only do not take my son back there. Now, I think that was just kind of said just as a matter of fact. But I fully believe that Abraham trusted, you're going to find a wife. And she's going to come back. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning the matter. Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and set out with a variety of good things of his master's in his hand. He arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city of the well of the water at the evening time, in the time when women go out to draw out water. He said, O Lord God, the God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today. I don't think that this is just blind or empty pleas. I think he's truly asking for success. I don't think this is just like a shot from the hip. I think he's legitimately, God of Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. I think he recognizes Abraham's faith, and that's inspiring to him. What about your faith? Do you inspire others? Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, Please let down your jar that I may drink, and who answers, Drink, and I will water your camels also. May she be the one I have appointed for your servant Isaac, and by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my master. And so think about that. Who is this servant depending on?
The God of Abraham, the God of my master.
Now he throws out this example, this wild, outlandish example. I think this was a thing that their culture practiced. I don't think that this is just a random example. But this was a way to show if this is the right kind, the right type of woman. This was a sign of respect. And so he throws out this example. Let this woman whom I asked to drink, and then she's going to let me drink, and then that she's also going to water the camels. She's going to take care of the animals. So he's depending on God.
Let me. So you're saying that was, you believe, was a kind of culture? Because I know it was a time that the women would go out to the well. It said that.
Right, and so that's what it's saying.
Yeah, but when listening to the servant's prayer, as he prayed to the Lord to identify this female by these, when I asked her for the water, she'd give me drink with not only me, but my camels as well.
Right.
As a sign to him that was from God.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it almost made it, I'm asking, if you mentioned something like that was a custom or?
Yeah, I believe that this was
For them to.
this was a way. It wasn't just the only way, but this was a way that, okay, this is how I'll know. And so this might be one way that they do it. But they have a custom, right? We have a custom. What is it that we typically do when we're looking for a mate? You didn't water any camels? Okay, we somehow become exclusive, right? And in that exclusiveness, there's bond that's beginning to be created and a level and form of trust, right? Is she going to still go out and flirt with all the guys? Is it? Zip it back there. You're not helping. Is the guy going to just continue in his promiscuous ways? Right? I don't want to just say it's just the women. That guys do it too. I'd probably argue that guys do it more than the women do. Now, that's a whole other discussion. But we have certain customs that we have developed, and now not everybody follows it. I mean, me and Sarah, we dated for 3 months and then got married. Some people called us crazy. It'll be 15 years if she doesn't kill me by the 23rd. My grandparents, they met on a blind date and were married 3 weeks later, and then he went off to war. So, I mean, there's customs, but not everybody practices the same custom. But typically, what do? We look at things that there might just be something that she does or that he does that says, that's the one. And obviously, here's this example here. And so he's depending fully on God. He's praying to God. How is he not depending on God? He's depending on God. And so let this be the one. You see? And so she ends up, as we know, as you continue reading on, she ends up leaving her family willingly. And there's a few hiccups along the way because Laban basically says, well, let's give it 10 days. Was it Laban or the father? It was one of them. They say, give it 10 days. Bill?
The servant impressed me because he wouldn't eat with the family until he had told them the whole story.
Right.
That just shows how special servant he was. And
But-
then he asked him if she could go back with him. And they wanted 10 days, but he said, I need to be on the road.
Yeah.
And so he gave them the camels. And another thing that impressed me is how much water can 10 camels hold? If she fed all them camels, they probably held 10 gallons apiece.
Whew.
I
So
can't believe that.
So would we say it's supernatural for her to water 10 camels?
Well,
She had a servant's heart, let's put it that way.
Right.
I was impressed with him that he prayed to Abraham's God,
Mm-hmm.
and Abraham's God brought his picture to him, exactly what he had made up in his mind.
It brought Rebecca.
And and then she fulfilled his request
Yeah,
that she didn't know anything about.
that's right. So,
Then he wouldn't eat with the family until he had told them where he come from, what his mission was, and that Rebecca was the one that was selected, and if she could go.
would she be willing to go?
Yeah, before he sat down and eat with the family. I just, it blows my mind.
You know. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about providence, that it's not always supernatural. All this is ordinary means. Him going up to her and saying, hey, can I have a drink? There's nothing supernatural about that. Okay. He didn't even ask her to water the camels. And she willingly did it. God works through ordinary means. And that's the point that I just want us to get. He works through ordinary faithfulness because this servant is working on whose behalf? Abraham and Isaac, to whom the promise was given. And so he's being faithful to them. Therefore, if he's being faithful to them, he's being faithful to God. He's reaching out to God. He's depending on God. And then as we know, go through the further of the story, she's chosen, Rebecca's chosen. She has to choose. She has a choice to make. Just because she follows through with his, God show me a sign, that doesn't mean she's necessarily going.
He done put a bracelet on her that was almost priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he gave her really every reason to just be like, peace, family. I'm about to be well taken care of, right?
Yeah, Laban said it was okay after he saw what she was wearing when she come back to the house.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But I want to ask a couple questions, though. Why was Abraham so careful about his son's wife?
He wanted his lineage to continue.
Yeah. Because when you start, well, let me put it this way. When you put a little leaven in the lump, what happens? The whole lump is leaven, right?
A little living the whole lot.
It's,
I'm just believing that, as you were stating earlier, as part of their customs. I don't see anywhere where the Canaanites ran across and grabbed any of Abraham limbs at this point of the story.
well, yeah, I mean, not everything's revealed. But I mean, but the Canaanites weren't nice people. So, I mean, it's just in this instance, Abraham tells them, don't go after the Canaanites. Don't, say, crossbreed or however you want to put it, don't get with those people. I want a specific kind of people in my family, right? Now, he's not using that verbiage, but that's essentially what happens. I was going to ask.
You can see that today in some cultures today. I mean, where you know, like the little Italian back there just got this.
Well, yeah.
Normally they right. Normally y'all keep it in the family, and then you can see like other cultures that are that way. Too.
Oh, yeah.
But you do see where you see interracial and.
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not saying it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the Catholics are, that's one of their strong preachings is don't marry outside the church, is what I understand, you know, keep it in the church.
Yeah.
Follow certain rules if you do, and so, I mean, that's just, you know, the whole, the big part of the children of Israel, the Canaanites, the countries of Judah and Israel, if we've been studying, that they didn't keep it, they married the Canaanites, and then they started worshiping the Canaanite idols, following their customs, and that led to their downfall. They're being taken hostage or taken prisoner.
Right. Well, and actually we have an example in the Old Testament, Ezra chapter 10, where the people had intermarried with another group of people they weren't supposed to. And so in Ezra 10 verse 3, they're saying, so now let us make a covenant, so make an agreement with our God to put away all the wives and their children according to the counsel of my Lord and of those who tremble at the commandment of God, and let it be done according to the law. Because they were warned not to intermarry. They did it anyways. And so God says, okay, I'm done with you. And so what do? They finally come to realize we have to get rid of these wives. We have to put them away. We can't remain married to them, because if we don't repent, what's God going to do? He's going to punish them. So yeah, I mean, it was important for their culture and for their lineage to continue on, but to behave on time, we're going to have to put a pause here, and we'll pick up here on Sunday. (9:43). Do you know my Jesus? Huh? Oh. (9:43). Do you know my Jesus? Do you know Jesus? It looks like everyone in this room has already made that choice, that determination to know Christ, to build a relationship with Him. But sometimes we get forgetful. And we see that's a habit for just humanity. We do things right for a while, and then there's a time where we just kind of forget and become complacent. And we see it throughout all the Old Testament. Complacency is dangerous, where we begin to forget where our blessings come from. And so this is a prime opportunity for us to rededicate our lives back to Christ. So if you're here tonight and you realize that you need the prayers of the congregation, you're wanting to talk to someone, but you're wanting to make things right with the Lord, and you want to be reconciled back to God, this is your opportunity to come forward as we stand and sing 943.